The starship Asteria hummed quietly as it drifted through the inky void of space. Its gleaming hull, adorned with the emblem of the United Earth Space Agency, reflected the distant starlight. Inside, the ship bustled with activity as its crew of scientists and explorers went about their daily routines. Dr. Samantha Chen, the ship's chief xenobiologist, stood in the observation deck, her dark eyes fixed on the swirling gaseous planet below. New Gaia, they called it, a world teeming with exotic life forms, ripe for study and exploration. After months of space travel, they had finally arrived at their destination. Quite a sight, isn't it? A deep voice rumbled beside her. Commander Jackson, the ship's leader, joined her at the window, his weathered face creased with a mixture of excitement and apprehension. Samantha nodded, a small smile playing on her lips. "It's beautiful, sir. I can't wait to begin our research." Jackson chuckled. "Easy there, Doctor. We still need to establish contact with the Zorans. Can't have you running off to chase alien butterflies just yet." The Zorans were the sentient species native to New Gaia. Humanoid in appearance, but with striking differences: iridescent skin that changed color with their moods, forearms that allowed for impressive dexterity, and a complex respiratory system adapted to their planet's unique atmosphere. This mission marked humanity's first diplomatic contact with the species. "Speaking of which," Jackson continued, "we've received clearance to dock with their orbital station. Suit up, Dr. Chen. You're part of the welcoming committee." Samantha's heart raced with anticipation as she made her way to the airlock. Joining her were Dr. Elias Reeves, the ship's linguist, and Lieutenant Maria Kovacs, head of security. As they donned their sleek, form-fitting spacesuits, Samantha couldn't help but feel a tinge of nervousness. "Relax, Sam," Maria said, noticing her friend's jittery movements. "They're not going to bite. Probably." Elias rolled his eyes. "Very helpful, Lieutenant. I'm sure Dr. Chen feels much better now." The airlock hissed open, revealing a long, translucent tube connecting their ship to the Zoran station. As they floated through, Samantha marveled at the alien architecture. The station was a work of art, all sweeping curves and bioluminescent surfaces that pulsed with soft, ever-changing light. They were greeted by a small delegation of Zorans, led by a tall, willowy figure whose skin shimmered with hues of blue and green. Elias stepped forward, his hands moving in the intricate gestures of Zoran sign language. "Greetings, honored hosts," he spoke and signed simultaneously. "We come in peace and friendship, seeking to learn and share knowledge." The lead Zoran's skin rippled with warm golden tones, a sign of welcome, Samantha recalled from her briefings. Samantha corrected herself mentally, responded with a series of melodic clicks and trills that Elias translated for the team. "Welcome, travelers from distant stars. I am Zalan, chief scientist of this station. We are honored by your presence and eager to exchange knowledge." As the formal greetings continued, Samantha found her attention drawn to one of the Zoran scientists standing slightly apart from the main group. Unlike the others, whose skin displayed various shades of welcome and curiosity, this Zoran's hide was a turbulent mix of deep purples and reds. It seemed agitated, almost distressed. Samantha leaned closer to Elias. "Is everything all right with that one?" she whispered, nodding discreetly towards the troubled-looking Zoran. Elias frowned, his eyes darting between the Zoran in question and Zalan. He cleared his throat softly. "Excuse me, Chief Scientist Zalan, but is your colleague unwell? We noticed some distress." Zalan turned, her own skin flushing a deep indigo. Concern, perhaps. She chittered rapidly to the agitated Zoran, who responded with a series of sharp clicks. The exchange grew heated, with other Zorans joining in, their skin flashing a cacophony of colors. "Dr. Reeves?" Maria tensed, her hand instinctively moving towards the weapon at her hip. "What's going on?" Elias held up a hand, his brow furrowed in concentration as he tried to follow the rapid-fire conversation. "I'm not entirely sure, but I believe a distressed Zoran is named Vixia. She's saying something about a cycle and pheromones. Samantha's scientific curiosity overrode her caution. She took a step forward, addressing Zalin directly. Please, if there's a medical issue, perhaps we can help. I'm a xenobiologist. Zolan's skin rippled with conflicting colors before settling on a muted blue. She turned to Samantha, her large, multifaceted eyes blinking rapidly. We apologize for the disturbance. Vixia is experiencing an unexpected biological event. It is a private matter. But Vixia suddenly pushed forward, her forearms gesticulating wildly as she loosed a stream of urgent clicks and whistles. Elias translated hurriedly, his voice tense. She's saying it's not just her. Others on the station are affected. Something about a mating cycle triggered early, and, oh no. What? Samantha and Maria asked in unison. Elias swallowed hard. She says the pheromones are spreading through the station's air filtration system, and they're potent enough to affect other species. As if on cue, Maria let out a sudden gasp. She staggered, leaning heavily against the wall, her face flushed. I don't feel right, she mumbled. Samantha rushed to her friend's side, her mind racing. This was supposed to be a simple meet and greet, the first step towards peaceful cooperation between their species. Instead, they were facing a potential biological crisis that could affect both humans and Zorans alike. As chaos erupted around them, with Zorans arguing amongst themselves and her own team struggling to maintain composure, Samantha realized that their mission had just become far more complicated and dangerous than anyone could have anticipated. The first contact with the Zorans was quickly becoming a first contact fiasco, and it fell to her to find a solution before things spiraled completely out of control. Little did Dr. Samantha Chen know that this unexpected turn of events would not only test the limits of her scientific knowledge, but also showcase humanity's unique ability to adapt and persevere in the face of cosmic challenges. As she stood there, caught between two species on the brink of a biological meltdown, the true adventure was only just beginning. Alarms blared through the Zoran space station, their shrill cry a stark contrast to the earlier calm. Dr. Samantha Chen's mind raced as she assessed the rapidly deteriorating situation. Around her, both humans and Zorans were succumbing to the effects of the alien pheromones, their behaviors becoming increasingly erratic. We need to establish a quarantine zone now, Samantha shouted over the cacophony. She turned to Zalin, the Zoran chief scientist, whose skin now pulsed an anxious yellow. Is there a section of the station we can seal off? Zolan's lower arms twitched nervously as she responded, her words translated by the increasingly flustered Dr. Elias Reeves. The research labs on the lower level have independent air filtration. We could use them, but we must hurry. Samantha nodded, then glanced at Lieutenant Maria Kovacs, who was leaning heavily against a wall, her face flushed and breathing labored. Maria, can you hear me? We need to move. Maria's eyes, usually sharp and alert, were glassy with an unnatural fever. I can't think straight, Sam. Everything feels intense. I know, but we have to go. Now. Samantha looped one of Maria's arms over her shoulder, supporting her friend's weight. She looked at Elias, who seemed to be fighting his own battle against the pheromones. Elias, help me with her, and try to keep translating. We need to understand what's happening. As they made their way through the twisting corridors of the station, following Zalin and a group of Zorans who were still lucid, Samantha's scientific mind kicked into overdrive. The pheromones were clearly affecting humans differently than Zorans. While the aliens seemed to be entering some kind of mating frenzy, humans appeared to be experiencing a range of symptoms from fever to disorientation. They reached the research labs, a sterile environment of gleaming metal and softly humming machinery. As soon as the doors sealed behind them, Samantha felt a wave of relief wash over her. The air here was clean, free from the intoxicating pheromones. Okay, she said, helping Maria into a chair. We need to figure this out fast. Zalan, I need you to tell me everything you know about these pheromones and your species' mating cycles. As Elias translated, Zalan explained that Zoran mating cycles were typically triggered by specific environmental cues on their home planet. The cycles were rare off-world, and never before had they affected other species. But we've never encountered a species quite like yours, Zalan added, her skin shifting to a thoughtful purple. Perhaps there's something about human biology that's particularly susceptible to our pheromones. Samantha frowned, her mind racing through possibilities. We need to analyze these pheromones. If we can understand their chemical structure, we might be able to synthesize a counteragent. She turned to the human team's communicator, relieved to find it still functioning. This is Dr. Chen to the Asteria. Commander Jackson, do you read me? After a moment of static, Jackson's voice crackled through. Chen, what the hell is going on down there? We're picking up some crazy biosignature readings from the station. Quickly, Samantha outlined the situation. We need the Asteria's lab facilities. Can you dock with the station and establish a secure, filtered pathway to our location? There was a pause before Jackson responded, his voice grim. Negative, Doctor. We can't risk contaminating the ship. You're on your own for now. Samantha's heart sank, but she steeled herself. This was why they were here, to face the unknown, to push the boundaries of human knowledge and capability. Understood, Commander. We'll find a way. Chen out. She turned back to the group, her eyes blazing with determination. All right, we're going to have to work with what we have here. Zalan, I need access to all your research on Zoran biology. Elias, you're with me. We need to go through it all fast. As they dove into the alien data, Samantha couldn't help but marvel at the complexity of Zoran physiology. Their bioluminescent skin wasn't just for show, it was an integral part of their communication and mating processes, tied intimately to their pheromone production. Hours passed in a blur of data analysis and hypothesis testing. Outside their safe haven, the station had descended into chaos. Security feeds showed Zorans and the few humans who hadn't made it to the labs in various states of distress and arousal. It was a powder keg waiting to explode. I think I got something, Samantha announced, her voice hoarse from hours of discussion and debate. The pheromones seemed to be keying into specific neurotransmitter receptors. In Zorans, it's triggering their mating response. In humans, it's causing a cascade effect, overstimulating our entire endocrine system. Zalan leaned in, her skin a mix of excitement and concern. Can you stop it? Samantha ran a hand through her disheveled hair. Maybe, if we can create a targeted neuroinhibitor, we might be able to block the receptors and stop the pheromones from binding. But we'd need to test it, and we don't have much time. As if to underscore her point, an explosion rocked the station. Alarms, which had faded into background noise, suddenly blared with renewed urgency. What was that? Maria asked, her voice weak but more lucid than before. Elias, who had been monitoring the security feeds, paled visibly. The pheromone-affected crew, they're trying to break into the environmental control center. If they succeed, they could flood the entire station with concentrated pheromones, Samantha finished, her blood running cold. Or worse, vent it all into space in a misguided attempt to help their crewmates. The gravity of the situation settled over the room like a heavy blanket. They were racing against time, biology, and the very real threat of catastrophic station failure. Samantha took a deep breath, centering herself. This was more than just a scientific puzzle now. It was a fight for survival, for both humans and Zorans, and it would take every ounce of human ingenuity, determination, and courage to see them through. All right, she said, her voice steady and confident, despite the fear churning in her gut. Let's get to work. We've got a station to save, and 2 species to protect. Failure is not an option. As the team sprang into action, Samantha allowed herself a moment of grim reflection. First contact scenarios were always fraught with potential dangers, but this was beyond anything they had prepared for. Yet, As she watched humans and Zorans working side by side, combining their knowledge and skills in a desperate bid to avert disaster, she felt a glimmer of hope. This crisis might have started as a biological fiasco, but it was quickly becoming a testament to the strength of cooperation, the power of science, and the indomitable spirit of both their species. Whatever the outcome, history was being made on this station, and Samantha was determined to ensure it would be a history of triumph, not tragedy. With renewed determination, she turned back to her work. The clock was ticking, and the fate of two worlds hung in the balance. The makeshift laboratory hummed with frenetic energy as Dr. Samantha Chen and her unlikely team of human and Zoran scientists raced against time. Holographic displays flickered with complex molecular structures, and the air was thick with the scent of alien chemicals and human sweat. "The neuroinhibitor compound is ready for testing," Samantha announced, holding up a vial of shimmering blue liquid. Her eyes were bloodshot from hours of non-stop work, but they gleamed with determined hope. Zalan, the Zoran chief scientist, approached cautiously. Her skin rippled with a mix of anticipation and concern. "How can we be sure it's safe?" she asked, her words translated by the ever-diligent Dr. Elias Reeves. Samantha's expression hardened. "We can't, not without a live test subject." She glanced at Lieutenant Maria Kovacs, who had been fighting the effects of the pheromones for hours. "And we're running out of time." As if to underscore her point, another tremor shook the station. The security feeds showed the situation outside their safe haven deteriorating rapidly. Pheromone-crazed crew members, both Zoran and human, were tearing the station apart in their frenzy. Maria struggled to her feet, her face pale but determined. "I'll do it. Test it on me." "Maria, no," Samantha protested, but the security officer cut her off. "Look, Sam, we don't have a choice. I'm already affected. If it works, great. If not, well, I'm not much use to anyone in this state anyway." The room fell silent, the weight of the decision hanging heavy in the air. Finally, Samantha nodded, her jaw clenched. "All right, but we're starting with a minimal dose." As Samantha prepared the injection, Zalan approached, her skin pulsing with a soft, comforting blue. "Your bravery honors us, Lieutenant," she said, placing one of her 4 hands gently on Maria's shoulder. "No matter the outcome, you will be remembered as a hero to both our peoples." Maria managed a weak smile. "Let's hope it doesn't come to that. I've got plans for shore leave next month." Samantha administered the injection with a steady hand, her scientific detachment warring with her concern for her friend. For several tense minutes, nothing seemed to happen. Then suddenly, Maria gasped, her back arching as if in pain. "Maria," Samantha cried, rushing to support her friend. But as quickly as it had started, the reaction subsided. Maria blinked, her eyes clearing for the first time in hours. I think it worked," she said, wonder in her voice. "The fog, it's lifting. I can think clearly again." A cheer went up from the assembled team, human and Zoran alike, but their celebration was short-lived as another, more violent tremor rocked the station. Elias, who had been monitoring the security feeds, turned to the group with a grim expression. "The Environmental Control Center, they've breached it." Samantha's mind raced. They had a potential cure, but no way to mass-produce or distribute it quickly enough. And now, with the environmental controls compromised, the entire station was at risk. "We need to get to that control center," she declared. "If we can't stop the pheromones, maybe we can filter them out or neutralize them somehow." Zolan's skin flickered with a determined orange. "I know the station's systems. If we can reach the control center, I might be able to help." "It's too dangerous," Elias protested. "The corridors are full of affected crew members. We'd never make it." That's when an unexpected voice chimed in. Vixia, the Zoran scientist whose early symptoms had first alerted them to the crisis, stepped forward. Her skin, once a turbulent mix of distressed colors, now pulsed with a steady, resolute green. "I can get you there," she said, her clicks and whistles translated by Elias. "My condition has stabilized somewhat. I can sense the pheromone concentrations. I can guide us through the safest routes." Samantha looked at the alien scientist with newfound respect. Despite being at the epicenter of this crisis, Vixia was volunteering to put herself at risk. It was a display of courage that transcended species barriers. "All right," Samantha nodded. "Vixia guides, I'll bring the neuroinhibitor supplies. We might need to synthesize more on the go. Zolan, you're our key to the environmental systems. Maria, you're our muscle. That inhibitor dose should keep you clear-headed. Elias, we need you for communication." As the team prepared for their desperate mission, Samantha felt a strange mix of fear and exhilaration. This was far beyond anything she had trained for, but it was also the kind of moment that defined careers and species. The fate of the station, and perhaps the future of human-Zoran relations, rested on their shoulders. They moved through the station like a well-oiled machine, human and Zoran working in perfect sync. Vixia's sensitivity to the pheromones proved invaluable, allowing them to avoid the worst of the affected areas. When confrontations were unavoidable, Maria's combat training and Zoran agility made for a formidable defense. As they neared the environmental control center, the true scale of the crisis became apparent. The corridors were scenes of chaos, equipment torn apart, walls dented and scratched, and the occasional unconscious crew member overcome by the pheromones' effects. "There," Zelen pointed with two of her arms. "The control center is just ahead." But as they rounded the corner, they found their path blocked by a group of affected crew members, a mix of humans and Zorans, their eyes wild and unfocused. At their head stood a massive Zoran male, his skin pulsing with aggressive reds and blacks. "That's Chief Engineer Kolar," Zalen whispered, her skin paling to a fearful white. "He's one of the strongest on the station." Samantha's mind raced. They were so close to their goal, but this last obstacle seemed insurmountable. Fighting their way through was out of the question. Even with Maria's skills, they were outnumbered and outmatched. That's when an idea struck her. It was risky, borderline insane, but it just might work. "Vixia," she said, turning to the Zoran scientist, "you said you could sense the pheromones. Can you produce them too? Controllably?" Vixia's skin rippled with surprise, then understanding. I think so, but it would be dangerous. I might lose control." Samantha nodded grimly. "I know, but if you can produce a concentrated burst, maybe we can overwhelm their senses just long enough to slip by. I've got enough neuroinhibitor for one more dose. I'll give it to you right after to keep you stable." The plan was dangerous, walking a fine line between salvation and disaster. But as Samantha looked at her team, human and Zoran, united in purpose despite their differences, she knew it was their best shot. "All right, everyone," she said, her voice low but filled with determination. "This is it. Whatever happens next, remember, we're making history here. Two species working together against impossible odds. Let's show the universe what we're capable of." With a nod from Vixia, they prepared to make their final push. As the Zoran scientist steeled herself to release a concentrated burst of pheromones, Samantha couldn't help but marvel at the strange twists of fate that had brought them to this point. What had started as a diplomatic mission had become a fight for survival. And in the crucible of this crisis, something remarkable was emerging. A partnership that transcended biology, culture, and the vast distances of space. As Vixia's skin began to glow with an intense, otherworldly light, Samantha took a deep breath. Whatever happened next would shape the future of both their species, and she was determined to ensure that future was one of cooperation, understanding, and shared triumph over the unknown. The final battle for the station was about to begin. The air in the corridor seemed to thicken as Vixia's skin began to pulse with an otherworldly glow. Dr. Samantha Chen held her breath, her hand hovering over the neuroinhibitor injector. Everything hinged on this moment. "Now, Vixia," Samantha shouted. The Zoran scientist's body convulsed, and a visible wave of pheromones erupted from her. filling the air with a shimmering haze. The effect on the group blocking their path was immediate and intense. Chief Engineer Kolar and his pheromone-addled crew staggered, overwhelmed by the sudden influx of stimuli. Some fell to their knees, while others began to move erratically, their skin flashing a kaleidoscope of colors. "Move!" Maria yelled, taking point and guiding the team through the momentary chaos. They dashed past the disoriented group, Samantha bringing up the rear. Just as they reached the door to the Environmental Control Center, she heard a guttural roar behind her. Kolar, his massive frame shaking with rage and confusion, was charging towards them. "Get inside!" Samantha shouted to the others, turning to face the oncoming Zoran. In one fluid motion, she raised the injector and fired its contents directly at Kolar's exposed neck. The effect wasn't instantaneous, but it was enough. Kolar's charge slowed, his eyes clearing slightly as the neuroinhibitor began to take effect. It gave Samantha just enough time to slip through the closing doors of the control center. "Seal it," Zelen cried, her forearms flying over the control panels. The doors locked with a resounding clang, leaving the team in the relative quiet of the control center. Samantha turned to Vixia, who was trembling, her skin a riot of conflicting colors. "Hang on," she said softly, preparing another dose of the neuroinhibitor. "This will help." As she administered the injection, Samantha's mind was already racing ahead to their next challenge. They had made it to the control center, but the station was still in crisis. Alarms blared from every console, warning of system failures and structural integrity breaches. "Zalen, what are we looking at?" Samantha asked, moving to join the Zoran scientist at the main control panel. Zalen's lower arms worked the controls while her upper arms gesticulated in distress. "It's worse than we thought. The environmental systems are on the verge of collapse. Pheromone levels are critical throughout the station, and the air recyclers can't keep up. We have maybe an hour before the atmosphere becomes toxic." Elias, who had been examining another set of readouts, chimed in. "That's not all. The station's orbit is decaying. All this chaos has knocked several stabilizers offline. If we don't correct it soon, we'll start to enter the planet's atmosphere." Samantha felt the weight of their situation pressing down on her. They had overcome so much to get here, but now they faced a challenge that seemed insurmountable. How could they possibly stabilize the station, clear the air, and neutralize the pheromones, all within an hour? That's when an idea struck her, a crazy, desperate idea that just might work. "The planet," she said suddenly, her eyes widening. "New Gaia. Zalen, you said the Zoran mating cycles are typically triggered by environmental cues on your home world, right?" Zalen nodded, her skin pulsing with curiosity. "Yes, but I don't see how that helps us now." "What if," Samantha continued, her words coming faster as the plan formed in her mind, "we could use the planet's atmosphere to our advantage? If we vent the station's atmosphere and replace it with filtered air from New Gaia, we might be able to reset the Zoran's biological responses." Maria frowned. "But wouldn't that just trigger a new mating cycle?" "Not necessarily," Samantha explained. "The neuroinhibitor we developed could act as a buffer. If we aerosolize it and mix it with the incoming atmosphere, we could potentially neutralize the pheromones and stabilize both species in one fell swoop." Elias looked skeptical. "That's a huge risk, Sam. We'd be betting everything on an untested theory. Not to mention the logistical nightmare of venting and refilling the station's atmosphere." "I know," Samantha admitted, "but look around. We're out of options and nearly out of time. This might be our only shot." The team fell silent, the gravity of the decision weighing heavily on them. It was Vixia who finally broke the silence, her voice steady despite her recent ordeal. "I say we do it," she said, her skin glowing with a determined blue. "As a xenobiologist myself, I believe Dr. Chen's theory has merit. And even if it's a long shot, isn't that what both our species do best? Facing the unknown, taking risks to push the boundaries of what's possible." Zelen's skin rippled with agreement. "Vixia is right. This crisis has shown us the strength of our cooperation. If we're to have a future of peaceful coexistence, it begins here with trust. Samantha felt a surge of gratitude and admiration for her alien colleagues. Despite the fear and uncertainty, they were willing to put their faith in human ingenuity and Zoran resilience. "All right," she said, her voice filled with newfound determination. "Let's do this. Zalan, you and Elias work on reprogramming the environmental systems. We need to be able to vent and refill the atmosphere in controlled stages. Maria, I need you to help me synthesize more of the neuroinhibitor and rig up a distribution system. Vixia, monitor the crew's life signs and pheromone levels. We need to know immediately if something goes wrong." As the team sprang into action, Samantha allowed herself a moment of reflection. This wasn't just about saving the station anymore. It was about proving that humans and Zorans could overcome their biological differences and work together to achieve the impossible. The next hour was a blur of frantic activity. Samantha's hands flew over the synthesizer, producing batch after batch of the neuroinhibitor. Maria, showing a surprising aptitude for chemical engineering, rigged up a makeshift aerosolization system that would disperse the inhibitor evenly throughout the incoming atmosphere. Zalan and Elias worked in perfect sync, their different anatomies complementing each other as they reprogrammed the station's complex environmental controls. Vixia kept a vigilant eye on the crew's vital signs, her unique sensitivity to pheromones providing crucial data. As they neared completion, a violent shudder ran through the station. Warning klaxons blared even louder than before. "We're out of time," Elias shouted over the noise. "The orbit's decaying faster than we anticipated. It's now or never." Samantha looked around at her team, human and Zoran, united in purpose. "Initiate the sequence," she ordered, her voice steady despite the fear churning in her gut. Zalin's 4 hands danced over the controls, venting atmosphere in 3, 2, 1. A deep groan echoed through the station as the atmosphere began to vent. On the monitors, Samantha watched as unconscious crew members were held in place by emergency magnetic fields. The pheromone-laden air rushed out into space, replaced by the carefully filtered and treated atmosphere of New Gaia. For several agonizing minutes, nothing seemed to happen. Then, slowly, miraculously, the vital signs of the crew began to stabilize. "It's working," Vixia exclaimed, her skin glowing with joyous colors. Pheromone levels are dropping across the board. A cheer went up from the team, but Samantha knew they couldn't celebrate yet. "The orbit," she reminded them. "Did we stabilize in time?" Elias turned to the navigational controls, his face tense. For a moment, the only sound was the beeping of computers and the collective held breath of the team. Then, slowly, a smile spread across his face. "We did it," he said, his voice filled with awe. "We're stabilizing. We're going to make it." As the reality of their success sank in, Samantha felt a wave of emotion wash over her. They had done the impossible, saved 2 species from disaster, and perhaps forged the beginnings of a remarkable interstellar alliance. But as she looked at her team, human and Zoran, exhausted but triumphant, she realized that they had achieved something even greater. They had proven that when faced with crisis, the differences between their species became insignificant compared to their shared capacity for courage, innovation, and hope. As the station hummed back to life around them, Samantha knew that this was just the beginning. The real adventure, the journey of 2 species learning to understand and complement each other, was only just beginning. And she, for one, couldn't wait to see where it would lead. The days following the crisis were a whirlwind of activity aboard the Zoran space station. As crew members of both species regained consciousness and clarity, the full impact of what had transpired began to sink in. Dr. Samantha Chen found herself at the center of it all, coordinating recovery efforts and fielding endless questions from curious Zorans and relieved humans alike. "Dr. Chen, a moment of your time." Samantha turned to see Zalan approaching, the Zoran scientist's skin shimmering with a mix of blue gratitude and green curiosity. "Of course, Zalan," How can I help? I've been analyzing the data from our adventure, Zalan said, her forearms gesticulating in excitement. The implications are staggering. Your neuroinhibitor, combined with the atmospheric exchange, it's opened up entirely new avenues of xenobiology research. Samantha couldn't help but smile at the Zoran's enthusiasm. It mirrored her own scientific curiosity, which had only been heightened by recent events. I was thinking the same thing. The way our two species' biologies interacted was unprecedented. There's so much we could learn from each other. As they discussed the potential for future joint research, Samantha noticed a commotion near the main docking bay. A group of Zorans and humans were gathered, their attention focused on a newly arrived shuttle. "What's going on there?" she asked, interrupting their scientific discourse. Zolan's skin flickered with a shade of orange that Samantha had come to recognize as surprise. "Oh, I forgot to mention. Your Commander Jackson has finally been cleared to dock. I believe he's here to assess the situation personally." Samantha felt a mix of relief and apprehension. While she was glad to see her commanding officer, she knew that the diplomatic implications of recent events would need to be carefully navigated. As they approached the gathering, the crowd parted to reveal Commander Jackson, his weathered face a mask of stern professionalism. But as his eyes fell on Samantha, she saw a flicker of pride break through his stoic exterior. "Dr. Chen," he said, his voice gruff but warm. "I hear you've been busy rewriting the book on first contact protocols." Samantha straightened, falling back on her military training. "Sir, I can explain." Jackson held up a hand, cutting her off. "Save it, Doctor. I've read the preliminary reports. What you and your team accomplished here, it's nothing short of miraculous." He glanced around at the mixed group of humans and Zorans. "I'd say you've done more for interspecies relations in a few days than our diplomats have managed in years." A ripple of amused clicks and whistles went through the Zoran contingent as Elias translated the commander's words. Jackson turned to address the gathered crowd. "On behalf of the United Earth Space Agency, I want to extend our deepest gratitude to our Zoran hosts. Your bravery and cooperation in the face of an unprecedented crisis have demonstrated the very best of what our species can achieve together." As Elias translated, Samantha watched the Zoran's skin shift through a rainbow of emotions: pride, joy, and a deep sense of camaraderie with their human counterparts. Zolan stepped forward, her skin a regal purple as she addressed Commander Jackson. "We are equally grateful, Commander. The actions of Dr. Chen and her team have shown us the true potential of our alliance. We would be honored to expand our cooperation, particularly in the fields of xenobiology and medical research." As the two leaders continued their diplomatic exchange, Samantha felt a tap on her shoulder. She turned to find Vixia, the Zoran scientist whose early symptoms had first alerted them to the crisis. "Dr. Chen," Vixia said, her skin a soft, appreciative pink. "I wanted to thank you personally. Your quick thinking and willingness to trust in our abilities, it saved us all." Samantha felt a lump form in her throat. "Vixia, I should be thanking you. Your courage, especially in using your own biology to help us reach the control center, that was true heroism." Vixia's skin rippled with modest blue tones. "I merely did what was necessary, but it has made me think, perhaps there is a way to harness our biological differences for the greater good." Samantha's scientific curiosity piqued. "What do you mean?" "Well," Vixia explained, her excitement growing, "our pheromone production, when properly controlled, could have medical applications, and your neuroinhibitor technology, combined with our bioluminescent communication, we might be able to develop new treatments for neurological disorders in both our species." As Vixia outlined her ideas, Samantha felt a surge of excitement. This was why she had joined the space program, not just for the thrill of exploration, but for moments like this, where the exchange of knowledge could lead to breakthroughs that benefited all. Their discussion was interrupted by Commander Jackson's voice, raised to address the entire gathering. "In light of recent events, and with the blessing of both Earth Command and the Zoran High Council, I am pleased to announce the establishment of a joint human-Zoran research initiative. This program will focus on collaborative studies in xenobiology, medical science, and cultural exchange. A cheer went up from the assembled crowd, the sound of human voices mingling with Zoran clicks and whistles in a strange but harmonious chorus. Jackson continued, a rare smile breaking through his usual stern demeanor. And I can think of no one better to lead this initiative than the woman who brought our species together in our darkest hour. Dr. Samantha Chen, will you accept this position? Samantha felt the eyes of everyone in the room turn to her. For a moment, she was overwhelmed by the magnitude of what was being offered. Then she felt Zalan's hand on one shoulder and Vixia's on the other, their support giving her strength. Commander, she said, her voice clear and confident, I would be honored. As another cheer erupted, Samantha looked around at the faces of her human colleagues and her new Zoran friends. What had started as a diplomatic mission, then turned into a fight for survival, had blossomed into something far greater, the beginning of a true partnership between their species. The crisis had tested them all, pushed them to their limits and beyond. But in doing so, it had revealed a fundamental truth, that when faced with the unknown, the combined strength of human determination and Zoran adaptability could overcome any obstacle. As the celebration continued around her, Samantha's mind was already racing with the possibilities that lay ahead. New frontiers of science to explore, mysteries of biology to unravel, and most importantly, bridges of understanding to build between their two worlds. The journey ahead would be challenging, filled with unexpected twists and turns. But as she stood there, surrounded by the unlikely family she had found among the stars, Samantha knew one thing for certain. Whatever the universe had in store for them, they would face it together. 1 year later, the observation deck of the newly christened Harmony Station hummed with activity. Human and Zoran scientists bustled about, their excited chatter filling the air with a mix of human languages and Zoran clicks and whistles. At the center of it all stood Dr. Samantha Chen, her eyes fixed on the swirling gaseous planet below. New Gaia, once a source of crisis, now a wellspring of discovery. Quite a view, isn't it? A familiar voice rumbled beside her. Commander Jackson, now Admiral Jackson, joined her at the window, his weathered face creased with a mixture of pride and awe. Samantha nodded, a small smile playing on her lips. It never gets old, sir. Every time I look at it, I'm reminded of how far we've come. Jackson chuckled. And how far we have yet to go. Your latest report on the medical applications of Zoran pheromones has Earth Command buzzing. Pardon the pun. Before Samantha could respond, a flurry of movement caught her attention. Zelin and Vixia were approaching, their skin pulsing with excited colors. Dr. Chen, Zalin called out, her forearms gesticulating wildly. The results from the latest neuroplasticity trials are in. You're going to want to see this. Samantha felt a surge of anticipation. The past year had been a whirlwind of breakthroughs and setbacks, each new discovery opening up avenues of research they had never dreamed possible. The neuroplasticity trials, combining human neuroinhibitor technology with Zoran bioluminescent communication, held the promise of revolutionary treatments for a host of neurological disorders in both species. As they gathered around a holographic display, Vixia began to explain the findings. Her once hesitant demeanor had blossomed into that of a confident lead researcher, a transformation Samantha had watched with pride. As you can see, Vixia said, her skin shimmering with scholarly excitement, the combination of targeted neuroinhibitors and bioluminescent stimuli has shown a 78% success rate in rerouting neural pathways in our test subjects. The implications for treating everything from traumatic brain injuries to degenerative conditions are, well, they're beyond our initial projections. Admiral Jackson whistled low. In plain English, Doctor. Samantha grinned. It means we're on the cusp of being able to help people, human and Zoran alike, recover from injuries and illnesses we once thought untreatable, and that's just the beginning. As the group discussed the findings, Samantha couldn't help but marvel at how natural it all felt. A year ago, the idea of humans and Zorans working side by side, casually exchanging ideas, and finishing each other's sentences would have seemed like a far-fetched dream. Now, it was their daily reality. The crisis that had nearly torn them apart had instead forged bonds stronger than anyone could have imagined. The joint Human-Zoran Research Initiative had quickly become a model of interspecies cooperation, attracting the brightest minds from both worlds. Dr. Chen, a young human researcher, called out, interrupting her thoughts. "The Deep Space Communication Array is picking up something unusual. I think it might be a signal." The room fell silent, all eyes turning to the main view screen. A series of pulses flickered across the display, too regular to be random, too complex to be natural. "It's coming from the Andromeda Galaxy," the researcher continued, his voice filled with awe. "This could be, it might be first contact," Samantha finished, her heart racing. She turned to find Zalin and Vixia already looking at her, their skin pulsing with a mix of excitement and determination that mirrored her own feelings. Admiral Jackson cleared his throat. "Well, Dr. Chen, it seems the universe has a new challenge for us. Any thoughts on how to proceed?" Samantha looked around the room, at the faces of her human and Zoran colleagues. She saw not fear or hesitation, but curiosity and eagerness. They had faced the unknown before and emerged stronger for it. Whatever this new signal represented, be it friend, foe, or something beyond their current understanding, they would face it together. "I think," she said, a smile spreading across her face, "that we should do what we do best. We'll study, we'll learn, and we'll reach out with open minds and open hearts. After all, if our two species can overcome our differences and achieve so much together, who knows what possibilities await us out there?" As the room erupted into excited discussion, plans already being formed and theories tossed about, Samantha felt a profound sense of gratitude. The path that had led them here had been fraught with danger and uncertainty, but it had also been filled with discovery, friendship, and the joy of pushing beyond what they thought possible. She thought back to that first chaotic day on the Zoran station, when their differences had seemed insurmountable. Now, those very differences were their greatest strength, allowing them to approach problems from angles neither species would have considered alone. As she watched humans and Zorans working side by side, their unique biologies and perspectives combining to unlock the secrets of the universe, Samantha knew that they were ready for whatever challenges lay ahead. They had proven that biology wasn't destiny, that instinct could be tempered with understanding, and that the greatest frontiers were those they explored together. The signal from Andromeda pulsed on the screen, a tantalizing glimpse of new mysteries waiting to be unraveled. But Samantha wasn't afraid. She was excited, because whatever they found out there in the vast expanse of space, she knew one thing for certain. Humanity, with their determination and adaptability, and the Zorans, with their unique biology and perspective, were stronger together than they ever could have been apart. They were no longer just two species fumbling towards cooperation. They were pioneers, explorers, and friends, ready to take on the universe. As the Harmony Station continued its orbit around New Gaia, Samantha Chen looked out at the stars with a sense of boundless optimism. The future was unwritten, full of challenges and wonders beyond imagination. And thanks to the unlikely alliance forged in crisis, they were ready to face it all. Together, they would write the next chapter in the grand story of life in the universe. And what a story it would be!